In the heart of America, where generosity thrives, a shocking discovery would soon send chills down the spines of a nation. Millions of dollars, intended to nourish needy children, vanished into thin air. This is the story of Feeding Our Future, a tale of betrayal where trust was shattered and innocence exploited. Join us as we journey into the depths of a $250 million conspiracy, where the lines between truth and deception blur. Feeding Our Future. The name itself evokes hope, a beacon of light for struggling families across the nation. But behind this facade of compassion lurked a sinister reality. What began as a noble endeavor, a lifeline for children facing food insecurity, would soon transform into a brazen conspiracy. This is their story, the story of Feeding Our Future. At the heart of this intricate web of deception stood Amy Bock, a woman whose ambition would ultimately prove her undoing. As the founder and executive director of Feeding Our Future, Bock wielded considerable influence, her charisma masking a ruthless pursuit of personal gain. Her vision to create a vast network of food sites, reaching every corner of the state and ensuring that no child went hungry. Driven by this ambition, Bock rapidly expanded Feeding Our Future's operations. Millions of dollars in federal funds flowed into the organization, fueling Bock's insatiable appetite for growth and influence. Yet, beneath the veneer of success lay a foundation built on deceit. While Feeding Our Future's facade promised nourishment and hope, the reality for many was far more sinister. Behind closed doors, a select group of individuals exploited the program for their own enrichment, siphoning off millions of dollars intended for hungry children. Fake invoices, inflated enrollment numbers, and ghost employees became the tools of their trade, each deception adding to their ill-gotten gains. Luxury cars, designer handbags, and extravagant vacations became the spoils of their crime. The chasm between the promise of Feeding Our Future and the grim reality experienced by many grew wider with each stolen dollar. Despite the carefully constructed web of deception, cracks began to appear in Feeding Our Future's facade. Concerned citizens witnessing suspicious activities at various food sites raised red flags. Whispers of fraud circulated through communities, their concerns reaching the ears of journalists and law enforcement officials. Auditors tasked with scrutinizing Feeding Our Future's books uncovered a series of alarming discrepancies. Inflated expenses, questionable invoices, and a blatant disregard for financial regulations painted a troubling picture. A storm was brewing, threatening to expose the dark underbelly of Feeding Our Future and bring its architects of deceit to justice. The truth, as they say, has a way of finding its way into the light. In the case of Feeding Our Future, it was a courageous whistleblower who first dared to pierce the veil of secrecy surrounding Amy Bock's empire. This individual, whose identity remains protected, had witnessed firsthand the fraudulent activities taking place within the organization. Driven by a sense of moral duty, the whistleblower decided to take a perilous leap. They gathered evidence, meticulously documenting the financial irregularities, the forged documents, and the blatant disregard for regulations. This act of bravery would prove to be a turning point in the investigation, setting in motion a chain of events that would unravel the entire scheme. Armed with the whistleblower's alarming revelations, investigators from the FBI and the IRS embarked on a painstaking journey to untangle the intricate web of deceit woven by Feeding Our Future. They meticulously followed a trail of breadcrumbs, each leading them deeper into the labyrinth of fraud. Bank records revealed a pattern of suspicious transactions, with millions of dollars flowing from Feeding Our Future to shell companies and personal accounts controlled by Bock and her co-conspirators. Investigators meticulously pieced together a puzzle of fraudulent invoices, forged attendance records, and fabricated identities. With each passing day, the evidence against Feeding Our Future mounted, forming an insurmountable mountain of proof that would be impossible to ignore. As investigators dug deeper into the Feeding Our Future case, they faced a race against time. With each passing day, the potential for evidence to disappear, for witnesses to be intimidated, and for more money to be siphoned away grew exponentially. The pressure mounted as public outrage over the scandal reached fever pitch. Newspapers ran scathing exposés, television crews camped outside courthouses, and social media platforms buzzed with demands for justice. In a dramatic turn of events, federal agents executed a series of coordinated raids on multiple locations linked to Feeding Our Future. The stage was now set for a dramatic showdown, as the alleged perpetrators of one of the largest food program frauds in American history prepared to face the full force of the law. The meticulously planned raids sent shockwaves through Minnesota, the sheer audacity of the alleged crimes leaving the nation reeling. Images of FBI agents carrying boxes overflowing with documents from nondescript office buildings flooded the news. Amy Bock, once a lauded figure in the fight against hunger, now found herself at the center of a firestorm. Her carefully crafted image as a compassionate advocate lay shattered, replaced by accusations of greed, deceit, and a callous disregard for the very children she vowed to help. As the initial shock subsided, a wave of anger and betrayal washed over the community. As investigators dug deeper into the intricate web of deception, a cast of characters emerged, each playing a distinct role in the elaborate scheme. Beyond Amy Bock, a network of co-conspirators, some driven by greed, others by misguided loyalty, had enabled the fraud to flourish. There were the owners of sham food sites, individuals who saw an opportunity to cash in on the lax oversight of the program. They submitted fraudulent invoices, inflating the number of meals served, even going so far as to invent phantom children to bolster their claims. Each player, motivated by a toxic mix of greed and opportunity, contributed to the largest food program fraud in Minnesota history. The wheels of justice, often slow to turn, grind relentlessly towards accountability. For Amy Bock and her co-conspirators, the day of reckoning arrived in a packed courtroom, the weight of the evidence against them impossible to ignore. Prosecutors, armed with a mountain of incriminating documents, meticulously laid out the case for the prosecution. They painted a picture of a calculated scheme, orchestrated by individuals driven by greed and a callous disregard for the vulnerable children they were entrusted to serve. One by one, witnesses took the stand, their testimonies weaving a tapestry of deceit, revealing the inner workings of the elaborate fraud. Amy Bock, once a master of charisma, appeared subdued, her gaze often fixed on the courtroom floor as if unable to face the consequences of her actions. While the guilty verdicts brought a sense of closure, the scars left by the Feeding Our Future scandal run deep, a stark reminder of the human cost of greed and corruption. The trust, once shattered, proved difficult to rebuild, leaving a community grappling with a sense of betrayal and uncertainty. For the families who had relied on Feeding Our Future, the impact was immediate and devastating. Many, already struggling to make ends meet, were left scrambling to find ways to feed their children, their hope replaced by a gnawing sense of anxiety. The scandal also cast a long shadow over legitimate food assistance programs, sowing seeds of doubt about their effectiveness and transparency. The road to recovery would be long and arduous, requiring a collective effort to rebuild trust, strengthen oversight mechanisms, and ensure that those responsible for the scandal are held accountable. Justice, in the case of Feeding Our Future, was served, but not without leaving a bitter aftertaste. Amy Bock, the architect of this elaborate scheme, was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, her ambition ultimately leading to her downfall. Her co-conspirators, each playing their part in this grand deception, also faced the consequences of their actions, their sentences ranging from probation to several years behind bars. The courts sent a clear message. Exploiting the vulnerable for personal gain will not be tolerated, yet no prison sentence could truly mend the broken trust, the shattered hopes of countless families robbed of their lifeline. The Feeding Our Future scandal serves as a harsh reminder of the fragility of trust. the ever-present potential for corruption to fester in the shadows. The Feeding Our Future scandal, while deeply disheartening, ignited a spark of determination across the nation. It forced a long-overdue conversation about strengthening safeguards against fraud in government programs, ensuring that every dollar intended for those in need reaches its rightful destination. Lawmakers, responding to public outrage, implemented stricter oversight measures, increasing accountability and transparency in food assistance programs. Community organizations doubled down on their efforts, working tirelessly to rebuild trust and ensure that no child goes hungry. But the fight against fraud, against the erosion of trust, is a collective responsibility. It demands vigilance from citizens, journalists, and policymakers alike. We must remain vigilant, holding those in power accountable, asking tough questions and demanding transparency in every facet of government operations. The legacy of Feeding Our Future must not be defined solely by the darkness of betrayal. Let it serve as a catalyst for positive change, inspiring us to work together to safeguard the future and to ensure that the promise of a helping hand is never again twisted into a weapon of greed. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of a scandal that shook a nation. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Oblivion Unlocked for more in-depth investigations into the mysteries that shape our world.